companies like DoorDash and others doing commercial in which the DoorDash drivers film themselves while at work, and then they use that and turn into marketing materials. Why? It's because it's less about DoorDash talking about their services and more than DoorDash talking about the community that makes the service happen in the first place.
Welcome back to another installment of the Next Gen Growth Case Study Series. In this episode today, we have on a special guest, Mario Dio, who is the General Manager of Network at Nova Labs. His professional journey includes significant contributions to the fields of wireless technology and network development. He's been involved in many discussions and presentations in the transformative power of decentralized networks, particularly with Nova Labs initiatives. And we're excited to have him on the show. Mario, welcome to the program.
Hey, no, nice to be here. Thank you for having me.
It's a very quickly moving and transforming world that we're in right now in the space of technology, and I'm sure that there's a lot for us to explore here. But before we get into the nitty-gritty of everything, give us a quick little Coles Notes of your background. How did you end up where you are now as a GM of networks at Nova Labs?
Wow. Well, yes. It's always interesting to kind of look back and try to make sense of it. The truth of the matter is that's really what it is. It's try to make sense of it while you're just jumping on the opportunity bus or whatever that opportunity bus comes in front of you. So yeah, my background actually is into telecommunication engineering. I was very much on a scientist role. That's why I even completed like a doctorate program in telecommunication engineering in Italy before coming over to the States. But then as I came over to the States, doing a couple of startups ventures, like contributing to startup ventures, I quickly realized that I really like the idea of what product is and how product drive people behavior. And specifically, I started to take a little bit of the engineering mindset that I developed as a telecommunication engineering doctorate into more of a product development and then into business development. I'm really fascinated by relationships of business development as a whole and how they can move at the growth of a business. So because of that, then eventually I started having more leadership roles. I work for actually in a very, very good organization called Cable Labs here in the States, which is this kind of like global innovation center for the cable industry as a whole. More than 160 members of worldwide. So I got the exposure to many different ways of doing innovation and many different ways of actually driving innovation across different countries. And because of that, step by step, I really, I got to get more leadership roles. And eventually, when I joined Nova Labs, I really was taken away from this idea of decentralization. Is something that speaks to a lot of my core values in many ways. And now what I do nowadays is more of a little bit of everything. I'm a general manager, which means that I have this responsibility and mostly try to help everybody do their job at their highest level. And that's what we're trying to achieve now with Nova Labs and this idea of decentralizing wireless networks for everybody's benefits. And that's really what's at the core of what we do today.
So you've done this, you mentioned, in many different countries. I can imagine that implementing different things in these different countries is different culturally. Have you noticed anything in that regard?
That is a great question because I did, and I keep seeing like specifically with Cable Labs, in my experience at Cable Labs, we have members from all over the world. And you're right, different cultures, different type of regulatory environments also, things like privacy, data privacy, that there's way different way of handling in the US versus Latin versus Europe. And so the innovation of products and services that somehow they are tied to those type of aspects change it. But also just culture, like the way team interacts with each other, the norms within teams are different. Today at Nova Labs, we have teams that are in the East Europe, and other they are in Europe. Other we have in Latin America. So we have actually a very diverse workforce. We are a fully remote company, and I think that if you stop at the surface level, if this might feel overwhelming in terms of the different ways and different culture and norms. But the moment you actually step into it, you try to step with everything that you have on, you can turn that in one of the greatest power, I think. And I do believe into that truly, because the moment you realize that speaking the right language actually gets people the best out of them, that's how you tap in. Everybody is able to tap in their potential fully. And so, yeah, it's very different, and every day is different, and every way of approaching conversation, specifically regarding technology innovation, might feel different. But adapting to the different teams and different countries and different mindset actually bring the best out of people. At the end of the day, people are always motivated, and teams are motivated by passion and by value-based leadership and value-based behavior. And I think that's what drives good teams to succeed.
Do you get a sense that that way of thinking or that way of looking at the industry as a whole has shifted dramatically in the last 3 to 5 years?
Absolutely. Yes. The answer is a resounding yes. And there is no doubt that things like the pandemic, for example, they changed dramatically the way we think about team interaction and team power. There was this there is undoubtedly the idea that being in the office in the same space fosters innovation, which I think is true in many ways. But also what we learned through the pandemic is that you can actually tap into talents that is not close to you and in a much easier way. And that actually brings that diversity of thinking that fosters innovations. Group thinking is one of the worst things that you can have in a company when, especially when there is group thinking, which is associated to complacency to leadership, in which, having a diverse and even geographically diverse team really helps going beyond that group thinking factor. And yeah, so absolutely, the last 3 to 5 years, I think the industry has shifted completely. And also, I think that as the newer generation come to into the workforce, I think, I don't remember the exact stats, but I think we have 4 different generations right now working inside the workforce. So think about how much different of life experiences this bring to the table, and being able to, again, to capitalize on that in a positive and creative way. It's in the past 3 to 5 years, I think has been really one of the company that done that successfully are the company that I think right now they're the most successful one. The one that are a little bit less in that mindset, I think they'll have harder times to cope with the future. I mean, especially the newest generation, they are much more creative in that way, and they do want to have that type of mindset in the workplace, and the industry itself. The industry themselves, they're adapting to that mindset in the product and services they actually create for that generation.
So one of the things that you mentioned was that there's multiple generations that span across, and all of these generations have different ways of communicating. And because of the challenges that we faced over the last 3 to 5 years, especially with the pandemic, we've kind of been forced into this situation where we had to innovate very quickly. Technology had to evolve very fast, but now we have come to rely on that innovation. Have you noticed any notable events or moments in your experience that you saw created a dramatic shift in the way that you do business?
That's a very interesting question. So, yes, I think that let's start from the first one. You say about ways of communication. Mm-hmm. And look, for example, I'll give this very straight up example, which the only thing I can think of is my experience, right? Mm-hmm. The usage of social media. I come from more of a, as I said, telecommunication background. I've been working with big telecommunication companies and small startups, still in the telco for quite a long time. Mm-hmm. Then I joined the labs, and this idea of decentralization it's pretty much embedded in also into more of a blockchain-oriented community, which is, of course, very focused on this idea of decentralization. The tooling that you, even within the same age group, the tooling that you have to use to reach out the same audience in the same age group, for a place like a cryptocurrency industry versus a regular telco industry are completely different. And what moves the needle and the way, even myself, like if you look at my Twitter account, I rarely used it before like 2022 when I joined Nova Labs, and now I'm there tweeting every day. And I do that because I see that the community that is that we're trying to tap into it really resonates with that. The number of blog posts that we post on our web pages go down dramatically. In the previous company 5 years ago, it was more of a telco-oriented company. We were publishing blog posts all the time. The Twitter account was like very minimal, and so I did that. That is very interesting. And so I don't know if I saw a shift necessarily. I do think that is, of course, social media and the way of what they call the next way of influencing, right? I mean, I think I was reading some couple of articles about the influencer 2.0 journey, like more of the professional coming into that space, bringing their knowledge to the greater audience. I think it's happening. And another thing that I definitely saw in the past 3 years is we are getting to the point in which it's pretty clear that people follow people less than people follow product. So if it doesn't matter how big of a good product you might put out there, it's very important. It seems to resonate really well with people that the people that are embedded in the product become part of the product. So it's that work-life, what they call separation, is really work-life integration. So you're talking about you as you're talking about the product that you are developing in the same time. Elon Musk is one of those that, of course, pioneering there's many different ways, but I do see that across the board now with all sorts of products from different industries. Like products are becoming people, and people are becoming the product that they're building, which I think is great because I think it shows that you're walking the talk, right? I mean, like you can, if that becomes your, if I wish everybody like I am lucky enough to do what I'm passionate about. When you do that, there is nothing better than being able to freely and openly talk about the things that you do every day to everybody. And I think you do that more, that it seems to actually to be that authenticity layer seems what is bringing in. I have an example in my industry, which is this telecommunication industry. Some of you might know, like Mint Mobile, for example, and other MVNOs, another operator. They became super famous because Ryan Reynolds, which is their CEO, was on their commercials. And that's what I'm talking about, right? Like, of course, Ryan could buy the company and have someone else running ads, but that becoming one with the product that you're developing, it seems to resonate in the past, again, 3 to 5 years more than has ever been before.
You touched on two spaces there that I think are really important to highlight for anybody in the space, which is the community that you're building, the people that you're bringing around you. It's no longer, and I don't know about you, but the generation that is basically like my age and under, like 40 and under, that group of people has a stigma against large corporations and getting screwed. And
the man working for the man, right? That's what it said.
Right. And so, and I don't know if that was, natively our perception, more so the perception of the boomers passing that information on to us and saying, hey, listen, you don't want to be a factory worker for the rest of your lives, which I think really did disrupt our way of doing business. And so on that note, when it comes to building community and your customer acquisition process, what do you find is working well, aside from obviously the human element of this? What are you guys doing that's really attracting people into your business?
I think that is spending less time, and it's something that, again, specifically in the role that I have now, which is this decentralized people power network, right? the more that you can do to mobilize, to create communities around your products and mobilize community so that they are effectively your sales force, the better. And so what we see is that anything that we do, even our activities and, from the marketing and other things, is less about that. You basically see almost like a complete annihilation of a transactional or between operation between you and your customer. Everything needs to be personal, and then not just personal. I really want you to come on board with the idea of joining a community, of joining a movement, and not only why, because I personally believe that that's way people usually act, is because they are part of a community. Mm-hmm. So if whatever you're selling, doesn't matter if it is a subscription, if it is a product, if it is a piece of hardware, if you can create a community around that talks on your behalf, it's really that it's better for anything. Now, specifically, again, in our case, even better, the blockchain community has always been that type of mindset. So it's a little easier because but you see this everywhere. Like you see this in the way commercial are done, right? I mean, like you have this let's say companies like DoorDash and others doing commercial in which the DoorDash drivers film themselves while at work, and then they use that and turn into marketing materials. Why? It's because, again, it's less about DoorDash talking about their services and more than DoorDash talking about the community that makes the service happen in the first place. And you know what I mean? Like, I think that shift in which I don't need to tell the story. I need to tell the story to a community, and then the community has to keep telling the story to everybody. And the more you make them part of the dialogue, and the more you give to them, because it's not just about leveraging, that would be transactional. And again, it's really giving to them as much enablement as possible. That usually comes back 10 times fold.
You're reminding me of a quote, and I can't remember exactly the quote, but something along the lines of, men die, but ideas don't.
Yeah.
And if you can distill the idea of what your business is doing down to a very simple set of frameworks, and then I don't know if insert or install or infiltrate a group of people with these ideas, mm-hmm. It becomes really, really easy for them to continue to perpetuate this thing, and then it lives on forever.
And you touched on a great point, the simplification, right? Because I think we went through a stage in the industry a little longer ago, but not too long ago still, in which the message, it was, at least in certain industry, maybe not directly retails for some segments, but in some of the segments that I've been into it was almost like the TLDR of the message was, this is very complicated. We can earn your trust so that we can do the hard things for you, so you don't have to understand that we do it for you. Which I'm not saying that is not still valuable in some cases. So, definitely you want to have your security camera to have someone that does that for a job. But I'm just saying, in general, the dialogue now is shifted, in which is less of that and is more of, let me explain to you what I think we're doing, and in very simple layman terms, so that you can talk about it, you can trust, and because you actually get it on the deeper level. So there is a level of simplification, and this is what we talk all the time internally, also in my team and other teams before this, is about the simplification of what we're doing, and how it needs to be as simple as possible, because you do want to get that enablement, and you want to appear less of let me take care of of this complexity for you, and more of someone that, like, let's work together towards a future that looks different than what we have. And this is what we're building. Do you want to be part of it?
There's a transparency there that's almost necessary now.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, there's no point right now. I don't think, again, there is always exception, but in general, there is no point into create this like obfuscation of complexity, because I want to create a feeling of like, I need an expert to run this, to buy this, because it's the completely opposite. It's like full transparency. This is what we're doing. this is why you should join us. Come on board with us, and we'll share everything that we do with you on a daily basis. That's what it connects it to the social aspect I was mentioning before, about leaders being the product that they are, which I think it's in my view, it's definitely different than what it used to be, and it so far seems to be working out really well.
There's a lot of buzz around, especially in the marketing departments of all of our businesses. There's a buzz around AI and new technologies and automations and all these really cool things. And I get a sense that you guys have leaned more into the personalization or the one-on-one conversations versus a systematic or a systemized approach to customer acquisition. Is that true, or are you trying to balance that? What does that look like for you guys?
I think you have to still balance it. There is no doubt around that.
Mm-hmm.
But I do think that, again, if you want to create stickiness in your customer base, you really have to convince them at their deep core about what you're doing. If you acquire a customer just because there is like a promotion or something that is really, if you only speak to aspect of the persona that you're targeting, and the persona is not fully buying, it's just because is specific promotion or because there is something specifically in the programmatic advertisement that you do based on the search. If you don't get the full persona bought in, then the stickiness isn't there, because as I say, we live in an area in which buzzwords true get their attention, but then you have to go beyond that. You have to go deeper for that buzzword to incarnate something that actually speak to the core of that person, which easy to say, it's very far from a marketing perspective, because we've been thinking about marketing and buyer personas and things of that in segments, and every segment is multiple millions, which is still balanced. You can't just do that, but you have to really try to buy in the persona in full in order to create a stickiness in the client. Another thing that we talking about disruption in the industry, one thing that we see a lot also is the company that there's a lot of churn in the industry for many services, because I mean, like, all of us, speak about AI, and many ads you see on Instagram feeds about the next AI accelerator for your calendar, or like digital assistant. So it's like, if you don't, you might get it for a month or a free trial of a month, but then that conversion, if you're unable to speak to the core of that person, is going to find something else to go try in the next month.
Yeah, that's churn is definitely a big challenge, because I perceive there to be a discrepancy between a business's expectations of how this should work versus the reality of how difficult it is to navigate these new waters of being a business and having to be transparent and having to be human, and you're not this big robot machine anymore. What kind of challenges do you see happening in the way of navigating those relationships?
Challenges are both in terms of the relationship piece, but as well also for actual business advantages and unique value proposition, right? Because the moment being transparent is an easy thing to say. We all like to be transparent, and that we all like transparent businesses. But if you are a business, especially in a very highly competitive space, you want to be fully transparent all the time. How do you balance that with the ability to become unique, to do have three secrets, to have a secret sauce that you and only you can bring to the market, right? And the ability to balance those two items, I think that's a new challenge. The new challenge is that how can we be transparent while keeping our edge, because in a competitive landscape. So that's the first one. The second one is also we said that when it comes to, like, once you were touching on relationship part of the equation. The moment you actually win the customer, it's like the beginning.
Mm.
At least the clock actually restarts. And the type of challenges that you have there because of the churn are, for example, we are in the business of right now the hardware or software services, whatever, like support, for example, is one of those things that, like, historically in companies are one of the most unsexy departments. Nobody wants to do support and blah blah blah. It's always like, oh yeah, those are the support guys. But now I can see how those departments are gaining more and more importance and way into the decision of the next iteration of the roadmap, the next iteration of the product, the next iteration of engineering, even marketing. Why? Because again, now there is very little, we all as customers, we have very little patience. So we want to go to support is such an old thing to do. You're like, oh, go and talk to someone, or like have someone to, and that's also where the AI piece, I think sometimes actually is can be negative, because you want to have the human interaction that understands you, and the last thing you want is to get to go to a chat box that might not understand what you're doing, and 3 seconds later there's a representative. Because you're like, I don't want to talk to you. I am really agitated right now. I need to have this fixed. So talking about relationship, what it means that leveraging your support team internally as a very, very good resource to, as quickly as we can, to fix the problems that are there, iterate on the new product, so that the goal is to make not only the support team as lean as possible, but really for the user to never come to support as possible. Usually, of course, is a dream, but in general, I think that's where one of the relationship piece, like the weight of the support teams now into this new business environment, it's grown up incredibly, even compared to, like, gosh, even 10 years ago.
Yeah, there's a need for that human element. There's a need for the automations. There's a need for a human to be human about those automations. And one thing that I find myself often doing even when I'm like setting up some of my own stuff is, how far can I take this before a human has to get involved? And then what happens when a human does get involved? How does it get passed back into the system and get moved around? And so there's a higher degree of complexity now with all of these new technologies and tools that we're using. For you guys, do you find it easier to work with third-party external systems and tools and things like that to help manage that sort of thing? Or do you work more in-house on that and keep that as a focus for the way that you guys manage your customer relationships?
I think that I think it would be highly unreal to think to do everything in-house, because there is some expertise that you don't have in-house, and unless you're maybe those are more like tens of thousands of employee company, maybe they might, of course. But specifically when I talk like a startup size type of business, I think that you do have to leverage external system. The trap that you don't want to fall into is to set as forget it and think of this as like a fully offload thing that someone else is doing for you. Sure, if they really messed up, then I'm gonna go and talk to them, because if you do that, then I think that would be it's a deadly mistake. So what you want to do is, which is in general is my take on everyone talks about the AI and the role of AI, and I think you mentioned something like that about the human touch before. What is the role? What is the role of a critical mind? And even though AI it might be a intellectual mind, the critical mind is to be able to go beyond common sense to find the nuance that only your gut feeling can tell you. The thing that AI doesn't have right now is the gut feelings. And sometimes, let's say you sign a contract with an external company to do whatever, chat box or whatever, and you have this interaction, you really try to fix things and things don't work. Like there is somewhere around the line in which the human interaction or the human evaluation of how things are going has to be in there. And that is your determination to go or not go, to change, to bring it in-house versus being in outside. So Yeah, so definitely some mixed the things that we do, but one thing that you want to avoid is to just set and forget type of thing. There's like, oh, if someone else is going to take care of it, I'm just gonna talk to that company when something goes wrong, because that there is no how. I think the winning is happening.
Yeah, the idea of passive income, where you just I make this thing and then all of a sudden customers come in and I make millions of dollars. It's very rare that that's ever even remotely close to the reality of it, and it does require a lot of intervention. I guess I would say because of the nature, the way that we are as consumers, the way we've evolved, the way we're educated a little bit more. We're just all the information we need is available to us. We just have to know how
Market
to
will
look,
tell you. The market will tell you. Like the
right?
moment let's say you let go certain aspects of your business and you willful or unwillful sometimes to direct it, that the marketing will tell you. Like there's no doubt. And the difference between 5 to 10 years ago is that now there is many ways for the market to tell you, which goes beyond the size of your sales funnel. It
Yeah.
is like social, there is like community, there is talk, there is countless different sites that speak around this about around you, about you and what you're doing. So yeah, so the market will tell you. So that's, I think, actually is good. What I mean is we are getting to a point in which we are all turning this gigantic community of people all trying to find what fits our bill. And it's very different than what our fathers and mothers were telling us it was for them.
Hmm.
So their expectations are higher, the competitiveness is higher, and the transparency, like we said, we just touched on transparency, competitiveness, and all these things being so detail oriented and so personalized to the point that you really, there is nowhere to hide for a business, and so the cream races to the top very quickly, and the others just do what they're supposed to do.
So we got a pretty good sense here of where you've been, where you are now. To kind of wrap things up here, I'd love to get maybe a forecast from you of what do you hope to see in the future for your business and maybe even in technology and some innovations. What do you see coming down the pipeline that you're excited about? What's in store in the coming months and years for you?
Well, I mean, specifically when I look at what I'm focusing on right now is um, again, the business that we're doing right now with Nova Labs and Helium Mobile, which is what my latest engagement is. It's it speaks to the same type of core values that that try to bring up, which is people are at the center of everything that humanity does, and even things that before were very hard, like for example, creating wireless networks, which is what we do at Nova, where we facilitate at Nova Labs. It used to be something that even your cell phone plan service, something you just buy for someone, and then you just expect it to work, and then you don't want to do about, and you don't want to worry about. Even in that aspect, there is an appetite which we are testing in the market to be something more, to be part of our community, to be part of a community that talks about their wireless service, for example. So if you extract that, what I would hope for the future, what I hope for the future is that we do see more of that humanitarian sharing economy, and which doesn't necessarily means a very rosy, if you wish, philosophical say, oh, like that's everybody will have. But I'm still pretty much a believer in the best will win and the capitalism behind. So I still think that is still the competition. But I do believe that, like I say, transparency and this idea of sharing resources. If you see all across the industries, like there is solar, there is energy, there is communications, there is knowledge. And all this is about sharing, right? It's about sharing what you have. And of course, there's going to be something for you, but there is always something for something else. I think that's the biggest, what I would like to see, and what I think we will see more is more and more businesses in which, of course, there is something for the person and the community are part of the business, but there is always some components for someone else. For someone else, no matter if it is community people, if it is your neighborhood, if it is people close to you, people far away from you. But you can. I think we cannot, we should not escape the call to a greater good that goes beyond the business that you're in, and that is what the value proposition of the products of the future will be. And there is especially the youngest generation around us, this seems to resonate with that a lot. And the economy of sharing, it's just the way things are working out, and for that generation. And we collectively we should pay attention to that, and because those are eventually this is the generation that will fuel the market in the future, that will buy the products in the future. And so we better pay attention to all those trends. And I like the work that I'm currently doing with the labs and Helium Mobile. It's very much aligned with that, and that's what I like about that.
You have such an optimistic perspective on things, and I think that's super refreshing, especially um, for the current climate right now of doom and gloom. You know, AI is going to take over the world, and everything's coming crashing down, and the economy's unstable, and yeah, you know, all the political nonsense that goes on. So it's nice it's like I said, it's refreshing to just hear that there is some hope for the future, and there are people out here that are working diligently to serve a better future, like yourself, Mario. And um, I think that's admirable that you've taken that charge, even if it was maybe not your initial intention. I think it's an inevitability of the work that you're doing. So
Yeah, exactly. I think that's an inevitability. I like that.
yeah. Um, in closing, I always like to ask my guests a tricky question here. So hopefully you'll be able to navigate this one. If somebody else in a similar situation as you, or similar position as you, was facing challenges in trying to kind of work through the current climate that we're in, do you have a piece of advice that you would share with that person that might help them overcome that?
So, yes, and I will tap into a very personal story because I think that was meaningful for me. I'm from Italy, like I shared initially prior to starting the interview. I live in the US now for a long time. And I think that recently my parents were visiting here. And one other thing that would encourage everybody that's especially when you are into the more of the retail business and you try to acquire market share and that type of thing, is to try to explain to your parents what you're doing. And the reason why I say that is because, at least for me, when I try to do so, it's a very interesting mix between a little bit being, if you wish, very proud, because of course you want to make your parents proud. So you want to show what are the things that make you proud about of your work,
Mm-hmm.
but also as your parents. So you also approach a little bit of humble, so a little bit of humility in the way you say it, because of course, I mean, you don't need to convince them beyond what is reasonable, because they're always going to love you no matter what, right? So, and the moment you struck the deal, I just caught myself in the like recently, it was like a couple of weeks ago, and it's that selling you or your product, of course, your business, in a way which is very enticing because you want to impress. You want to impress your parents. At the same time, selling it with the humility of someone that somewhat is confident in what he knows, and he knows that the other person will always be there anyway. I don't know, that there is something in the mix of those two emotions that I think the company, I don't know how to put the fingers straight into it, but if you're facing challenges and speaking to your market, try to be at the same time humble yet confident in what you're delivering. And I think it plugs very well with the transparency that we touched on before. If you can strike that balance between these two, I think you have a higher chance to create a message that resonates to people. People don't want to hear overinflated things. Also, they don't want to hear meek messages that don't mean anything. So they want to see and hear messages that actually have a thing. They have something that gets your attention, but then you don't need to crush that attention to the point that person is like, okay, let me go now. And sometimes like it's too much. So that, and then I don't know, for me it was try to talk to my parents. I don't know why these two feelings kept going back and forth in the discussion, and I noticed myself in that discussion there. So yeah, so that would be my try to be humble and confident at the same time. It's one of easy to say, hard to do. But I think if we collectively try to do more of that, I think we'll speak to our market in a way that seems more natural, seems more human, without diluting all the cool things that we're doing. You know, all the cool things that you want them to buy into. If it is a product, you're buying a service or product or whatever that is that you're selling into the marketplace.
Mario, I relate to that so deeply because, hey, one of the hardest people I've ever had to sell my idea to was my father. And the one relationship and conversation that I think I've gotten the most insight from was the ones where I was selling my father on something. So
I'm telling you, it's I don't know, for me it worked. It was like, this is, I don't know. And even like I brought some of those things internally. I was like, I think we should just, why are we talking in this way about what we're doing in certain things, of course. So it's interesting.
very sound advice. Thank you for that. I guess we're coming up to the end here, Mario. You've been very generous with your time, and on behalf of everybody who is or potentially watching or listening, I just want to say thank you for that. You've shared some incredible insights and wisdom, and so if somebody wanted to reach out to you to further this conversation or pick your brain or maybe even work with you, is that potentially a possibility?
Absolutely. See, please feel free to reach out to me. You know, you can find on different. We talk about my Twitter account, which is the Dio Mario. That's my handle. Or you know, if you want on the professional basis on LinkedIn, of course. Yeah, happy to connect to everybody that wants to talk. Always great to have chats and to share what we're working through and get to know what is the next, both for that person and for me as we figure it out together.
Perfect. We'll link to all that in the show notes when we put this episode out. So if anybody's looking for that, that's where you're going to find it. If you want to get in touch with me or any of the people that we work with, it's nextgengrowth.com. Otherwise, that's it for this episode, and we will see you in the next one.